Welcome to Media Storm Cooper. Now let's begin with our top story. The situation in the Middle East has reached a dangerous new stage. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated military strikes across Iran. What began as targeted operations quickly grew into a broader conflict that now threatens to pull in more countries and disrupt life far beyond the region. This escalation did not come without warning. For months, tensions had been building. Israel and the U.S. had expressed deep concern over Iran's nuclear activities and its support for armed groups across the area. Earlier clashes, including a short but intense period of fighting in June 2025, had already damaged parts of Iran's defenses and facilities, yet diplomacy continued in fits and starts. Talks aimed at limiting Iran's nuclear program appeared to stall, and both Washington and Jerusalem concluded that stronger action was necessary. The strikes started early that Saturday morning. American and Israeli forces hit a wide range of sites inside Iran. Reports pointed to military bases, missile production centers, and locations tied to the country's nuclear efforts. In a significant development, the operations also reached senior leadership. Iran's longtime supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in the initial wave of attacks. Several other high-ranking officials, including figures from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and key government advisors, lost their lives as well. These losses left Iran facing an immediate leadership crisis. Iran did not wait long to respond. Within hours, the country launched its own barrage of missiles and drones. The targets extended beyond Israel. Iranian forces struck at American military installations scattered across the Gulf region. Countries hosting U.S. bases, including Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, found themselves caught in the crossfire. Explosions rocked airfields, ports, and other facilities. Some strikes caused damage to civilian areas, including airports in places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Panic spread as residents heard sirens and saw smoke rising over major cities. The retaliation carried a clear message. Iranian officials described their actions as legitimate self-defense against what they called an illegal assault. They accused the U.S. and Israel of violating international rules and pledged to continue responding as long as the attacks persisted. In the days that followed, Iran kept up the pressure, firing additional waves of projectiles. Some reached Israeli territory, where defense systems intercepted many, but not all. A handful caused injuries and property damage inside Israel. Other missiles and drones headed toward Gulf states, forcing those nations to activate their own air defenses and, in some cases, close their airspace. One particularly worrying move involved the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway serves as a critical route for much of the world's oil supply. Iran signaled it could restrict shipping there, and reports soon emerged of increased Iranian naval activity in the area. The possibility of disrupted oil flows sent ripples through global energy markets. Prices rose sharply, and concerns grew about potential shortages in parts of Asia and beyond. Shipping companies began rerouting vessels, adding costs and delays to international trade. The human cost mounted quickly. In Iran, strikes destroyed homes, schools, and hospitals in certain areas. Health officials and aid groups reported hundreds of deaths and thousands of injuries among both military personnel and ordinary citizens. Tehran and other cities saw streets empty out as people stayed indoors or sought shelter. Power outages and communication problems added to the hardship. In Israel, while defenses held firm in many instances, some incoming fire still caused casualties and forced large numbers of people into protected spaces for extended periods. Gulf countries, many of which had tried to stay on the sidelines or quietly urge restraint, suddenly faced direct threats. Missiles aimed at U.S. assets sometimes landed near or on civilian infrastructure. Airports suspended flights, stranding travelers and disrupting commerce. Oil and gas facilities in places like Ras Laffan in Qatar sustained damage, raising fears about longer-term energy stability. Leaders in these nations condemned the Iranian actions and called for an immediate end to the violence. Some quietly supported defensive efforts by American and allied forces. The conflict did not remain limited to direct exchanges between the main parties. Proxy groups aligned with Iran stepped up their involvement. Hezbollah in Lebanon fired rockets toward northern Israel, prompting Israeli forces to respond with intensified operations inside Lebanese territory. In Yemen, Houthi militants launched additional attacks, further stretching defenses across the region. These moves suggested a wider network activating in support of Tehran, even as those groups faced their own pressures. On the political front, the leadership transition in Iran happened swiftly, but under duress. Within days of the supreme leader's death, his son Mojtaba Khamenei was selected as the new figure at the top. Iranian state media showed officials pledging loyalty, but the speed of the process raised questions about stability inside the country. The interim leadership also included senior figures from the government and judiciary who tried to project continuity while managing the crisis. International reactions varied. The United Nations Security Council held emergency meetings. Some members condemned the initial U.S.-Israeli strikes as aggressive. Others focused criticism on Iran's retaliatory attacks, especially those hitting civilian or third-country targets. Calls for de-escalation and a return to talks echoed from many capitals. The UN Secretary-General warned that the fighting risked spiraling out of control and urged all sides to protect civilians and respect international law. European leaders expressed concern and supported diplomatic efforts. The United Kingdom, France, and Germany issued joint statements calling for restraint while reiterating long-standing positions on Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional behavior. Russia and China voiced stronger opposition to the strikes on Iran, describing them as destabilizing. Yet neither appeared ready to intervene directly on Iran's behalf. Arab states in the Gulf pushed for protection of their sovereignty and navigation rights through key waterways. In the United States, President Trump described the operations as necessary to eliminate serious threats. He emphasized that the goal included preventing Iran from ever developing nuclear weapons and weakening its ability to project power through missiles and allied militias. American officials highlighted the precision of many strikes and claimed significant damage to Iran's military capabilities. At the same time, they acknowledged the risks of a prolonged fight. Israel's government framed its actions as self-preservation. Officials pointed to years of Iranian threats, including public statements against Israel's existence and support for groups that had attacked Israeli communities. They argued that allowing Iran's programs to advance unchecked would pose an existential danger. Israeli forces continued operations aimed at degrading Iran's remaining missile stocks and air defenses. As weeks passed, the fighting settled into a pattern of strikes and counterstrikes, though the intensity fluctuated. U.S. and Israeli aircraft carried out further missions against Iranian targets, including energy infrastructure and command centers. Iran responded with more missile barrages, sometimes in large salvos involving hundreds of projectiles. Defense systems on both sides worked hard, but leaks through the shields caused casualties and destruction. The economic effects spread globally. Oil prices climbed, affecting everything from gasoline at the pump to the cost of goods shipped worldwide. Airlines canceled routes through the region, and insurance rates for vessels in the Gulf rose dramatically. Businesses in tourism, logistics, and manufacturing felt the strain. In parts of the Middle East, power shortages and damaged infrastructure disrupted daily life for millions. Humanitarian organizations raised alarms about the impact on civilians. Aid access became difficult in affected areas of Iran and Lebanon. Reports of damaged hospitals and schools added urgency to calls for pauses in the fighting to allow relief efforts. The UN Human Rights Office noted that ordinary people on all sides were bearing a heavy burden from decisions made by their leaders. Looking at the broader picture, this conflict builds on layers of unresolved issues. Iran's nuclear program has long been a flashpoint. Its network of regional partners has allowed it to exert influence without direct confrontation until now. Israel has viewed these developments as direct threats and acted accordingly. The United States, with its long-standing security commitments in the Gulf and to Israel, found itself drawn deeper into the fray. The path forward remains uncertain. Some analysts suggest the intense pressure could force Iran toward negotiations on stricter limits for its nuclear and missile activities. Others worry that the leadership in Tehran may choose to endure the strikes, rally domestic support through nationalism, and wait for the attackers to tire or face domestic political costs. The involvement of third countries, whether through bases, shipping lanes, or proxy forces, adds layers of complexity that could prolong the crisis. For now, the region stands on edge. Families in Tehran, Tel Aviv, Doha, and other cities monitor the news and prepare for the next alert. Leaders weigh military options against the risk of even wider war. Diplomats search for openings to talk even as missiles continue to fly. The stakes are high, not only for the people living through the violence, but for global stability, energy security, and the fragile balance that has defined the Middle East for decades. This confrontation has already changed the landscape. Air defenses have been tested on a massive scale. Leadership structures have been shaken. Economic dependencies have been exposed. Whether it leads to a decisive shift in power, a negotiated settlement, or a dangerous stalemate will depend on choices made in the coming days and weeks. One thing is clear: the Middle East conflict has entered a more intense phase, with consequences that will be felt for years to come.